The Story of Everything, Chapter 11, The Ascent. My body convulsed as I traded air for seawater in my lungs. After I composed myself and calmed my heart, I trudged forward a few steps so I wouldn't be tempted to back out. Then I sat down on the golden road, getting used to this strange, new environment. I reached out and ran my fingers along the golden path. The Challenger Deep, I thought, the deepest point on Earth. It should have been pitch black, but because this was only a 10-meter wide slice of ocean, the Big Bang glow gave me just enough light to see the golden path and the seabed. I suppose I should explain to you, Chava, how it is that I could breathe water or not be crushed by the weight of an entire ocean, or how I could touch lithium without burning my hand. Of course, if I had taken this journey with my normal body, I would have been incinerated and blinded by the Big Bang and crushed to a speck by its density amid all the other hazards. But if I were just a mind floating about, I wouldn't have experienced the Big Bang or this new Via Sophia journey in a fully human way. We're not bodiless angels. We're embodied flesh creatures, and we experience the world through our 5 senses. So Sophia gave me what I guess you could say is a dream body. I don't know what your dreams are like, Mother, but in mine I can breathe underwater, although my breaths are shallow when underwater. I experience heat and cold, but not as sharply as in real life. I feel almost weightless most of the time. In fact, I can fly short distances and levitate up to small heights, either standing or scrunched up in a ball. The distance and height always depend on how much faith I have and how much I can overcome my fear of heights. But I can usually fly above trees just fine. I can also lift small objects using my mind in my dreams. That seems to be based on how much faith I have too, and it depends on whether I can somehow feel the object and its weight, as if through the invisible quantum fields that connect me to it. If I can somehow feel that distant object, I can lift it. This, then, is the dream body I had. I could feel a bazillionth of the heat of the Big Bang, just enough to have an experience. My eyes could usually adjust to the light, and I could always breathe despite a lack of oxygen, although not always easily. We also had to set some ground rules when we got to the real planet Earth, as you'll see later. For example, I could leave footprints or push back foliage or make a splash in the water or eat fruit or touch dinosaur eggs, but these interactions were strictly visionary. Animals would sometimes even look at me and respond to me, but everything I touched would soon revert to its original state, so they would have no memory of me. In reality, I didn't interact with anything at all. Such interactions were strictly forbidden by Sophia because they would disrupt the space-time continuum. But for the sake of the experience, she made it so that it always seemed as if I were really there. I could even magically wear whatever clothes seemed appropriate for the journey. As for bodily needs, she graciously nullified pretty much everything from the waist down because having to use the bathroom would distract from the journey. As for being at the deepest point in the ocean, in my real body, I would be crushed into gelatin. In my dream body, I felt something of the weight and density of the ocean. I myself seemed to weigh about 40 pounds, and I could walk through the water much faster than would be possible in reality. Sophia actually went easy on me for this Via Sophia exercise, because otherwise it would take me an eternity to go from the bottom of the Challenger Deep to the top of Mount Everest. I trudged through the thick waters for quite a long way before the golden path started to rise. I didn't see any fish or plants. I would find out that the reason is that Sophia wanted me to wait to see living things when they first appeared, which would be billions of years from now. I soon saw a massive dark wall come into view. Sophia would later explain to me these features along the path. This massive wall would turn out to be the eastern edge of the Mariana Plate, a tectonic plate of the Earth's crust. The Pacific plate subducts underneath the Mariana Plate, meaning it goes under it. The Challenger Deep lies along the point at which these two plates meet. That means that right about the time the Golden Path became Golden Stairs, I was leaving the Pacific Plate behind and starting to climb the face of the Mariana Plate. The stairs didn't last long. They soon became a kind of cord or rope, a literal golden thread by which I had to pull myself up the cliff face. This was a 5.5-mile hike, longer than the hike up Mount Everest from its base. So even though I bounded up fairly quickly with my dream body, it still took me hours to reach the top. It was a relief when I finally got to the top of the cliff to be on a level path again, although I was still deep underwater and I still had a steady incline ahead of me. Sophia and PM2 designed this climb from the bottom to the top of the Earth so that it was a continuous climb. That means they cut out 99% of the journey, which would have been thousands of miles long otherwise. Basically, any time there was a major descent, they cut that part out, and the next highest climb along a straight line from the Challenger Deep to Everest would appear. So if you were to look at the knife in the sky, or the slice as I call it, from the side at a considerable distance, say 50 miles, it would look like a continuously upward graph of land, with a large wedge of water over the bottom 2/3 of the graph. Oh yeah, PM2. That's the silver bracelet watch that Sophia gave me when we first set out. It's not loose like a normal bracelet. It has a soft black material that hugs my wrist tightly so that it doesn't flop around, so it's more like a watch. PM2 is my time machine. It's also my dictionary. Sophia uses a lot of big words, so I can ask PM2 what subduct means and it'll tell me. Sophia encouraged this habit. She said this is the best way to build my vocabulary, to look up unfamiliar words the very first time I hear them. And she was right. The more I looked up her big words, the less I needed to do it. After a while, it became rare that I needed to look up something she said. The coolest thing about PM2, other than time travel, is that it has two little cylinders in it. One is called Bib, the other is called Arrow. Arrow, as you now know, is a robot that can make any kind of techno-gadget or set piece we need, like this slice of Earth I was in. Bib unrolls into a scroll or into a book and a pen. Bib is the book you are holding right now. Arrow, as I said, looks like a white tic-tac about the size of a 5-gallon bucket. His belly panels open up to reveal arms or any conceivable tool or weapon. He has big black eyes and two antennas on top, in the middle, that are of one piece with his body exterior. They make me think of bee wings or rabbit ears. He doesn't talk. Instead, he makes a high-pitched but musical electronic chatter when he communicates that tickles my ears, kind of like a cross between a cicada and wind chimes. He displays what he's thinking in emojis or in words or pictures. He projects these images holographically between his antennas. When I reached the top of the Mariana Plate, my path abruptly became the Luzon Strait between Taiwan and the Philippines. I was now at about 1,760 feet below sea level, according to PM2. Soon I was climbing stairs again. This was the edge of the continental shelf of China. I then had a long stretch of level ground at depths of hundreds of feet. The water was lightening up a little, but it was still dark. At one point, I decided to go off the path to the left side of the slice and poke my head out. I got down on all fours and slowly pushed my head out. I didn't want to breathe air yet and have to go through the convulsions again, so I held my watery breath. I saw the floor of the lithium sea thousands of feet below the steady wall of dark rock. I then carefully turned around on my back and saw the glassy wall of water stretch high above. Okay, that's enough, I garbled to myself as I pulled myself back into the slice, feeling dizzy from the heights. While there, I waved to Sophia and Arrow, who were hovering like guardian angels just a short distance away. She waved back. Arrow displayed a waving emoji. The golden path continued at a gently upward pace for a long time. The water was getting ever lighter. Soon I could see the tops of the waves high overhead. I pressed on until I could feel the back and forth sway of the shore. I had to stay in the middle of the slice so that the force of the waves didn't push me over the sides. Soon I was crawling on sand, and the waves were pushing me into the open air. Finally, when the water was waist deep, I could stand. I coughed the water out of my lungs and ran onto the warm white sands where I flopped down exhausted. Sophia, is it okay if I take a nap? Sure, Aleph, you earned it. I didn't necessarily need sleep in my dream body, but I sure missed it, especially after climbing out of ocean water 7 miles deep. Where am I anyway? Da Peng Peninsula, she said, on the shore of the South China Sea. You're in China now. I drifted off to sleep thinking about how I missed people in big cities. The sea jutted out into a long, narrow line that vanished in the distance. Turning around, I saw a long white needle piercing the amber sky. I could see the top of Everest, even from this narrow shore. Wind-driven snow slowly drifted away at the top of this spire of rock. Can't you just carry me the rest of the way? I asked. You're still doing the movie, right? She said. Is the movie going to turn out okay? Yes. I swept away some of the sand at my feet. The golden path was still there. I set out, easy steps at first, up a small hill. This gradually turned into a series of increasingly rugged peaks, one after another, each peak higher than the last. This was the vast realm of mainland China. The golden stair path was starting to wind quite a bit, sometimes taking me close to the edge. I tried not to look over the edge or too far ahead or behind, because when I did, I lost courage. 10 meters is plenty wide to feel safe, but as a miles-long slope, looking up ahead or down below, a 10-meter width looks razor thin. I honestly don't know if I can do this, I said as my knees buckled from dread. Be where you are, Sophia said gently. With big tasks that seem beyond your ability, it's prudent to know what the entire journey requires. But thinking about the whole project while you're working on it is often unhelpful. Don't look too far ahead or behind, and you'll be okay. With big tasks that seem beyond your ability, it's prudent to know what the entire journey requires, but thinking about the whole project while you're working on it is often unhelpful. Don't look too far ahead or behind, and you'll be okay. She was right. I just needed to focus on each step, each ledge, each new peak. How far is it from top to bottom? I asked. From the Challenger Deep to the top of Everest is about 64,888 feet, so a little over 12 miles. You're well over halfway there. In fact, the ocean is deeper than Everest is tall. Everest is 29,032 feet tall, while the Challenger Deep is 35,856 feet deep. I asked, so you could sink Mount Everest in the Mariana Trench? That's right, she said, and the peak would be submerged under more than a mile of water. My legs buckled again at the thought of the immensity of the slice, and I lost courage again. She continued to reassure me. Again, just be where you are and complete the task, that lies immediately before you. Gabriel told you you need an occupation, didn't he? Yes, he did. Well, this is your occupation. No matter whether you're cleaning bathrooms, writing a book, filing documents, teaching a class, lying sick in bed, feeding the homeless, or climbing Mount Everest, your occupation is to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. And walking can only be done one step at a time. Ask God to direct all your paths to Him so that you may enjoy Him both now in the toil of the journey and forever when you rest in Him. That is your occupation. You can pray, God of beauty and radiant light, direct all our labors, so that as many of us as possible may see as much of you as possible, both now and in eternity. Feeling encouraged by her prayer, I made my way forward again, not looking too far ahead or too far behind. I first reached 5,000 feet elevation near Qianqinan, near the border of Yunnan province, a very rocky, mountainous region in eastern China. I was starting to see occasional snowflakes fall, but the mountains of Yunnan were mostly dry. I hiked over several peaks in the 7,000 to 8,000 feet range. At the western end of Yunnan, I was at 10,000 feet. At the border of China and Myanmar, I was at 12,800 feet. Light flurries were starting to fall, and I saw patches of snow here and there. Almost all of Myanmar is lower in elevation, so Sophia cut that part out. Instead, the eastern edge of Bhutan showed up, and soon I was at 14,000 feet. I was almost halfway to Everest by land. I looked ahead and saw only a couple peaks before Everest rose high into the air like a suspension bridge cable. I looked behind, too. Bad idea. I had to sit for a while to regain composure. The cool, clean air felt good. I rested for a while, eyes closed so that I wouldn't get vertigo. Sophia, tell me, why should we accept the Big Bang Theory? And why would God make the universe through evolution when He could just make fully grown creatures? She responded, well, first of all, we shouldn't try to guess what God would or wouldn't do because we don't have infinite wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, so we can't know all the factors that come into play in creating a universe. And not just any universe, but a universe full of living creatures, many of which can freely choose between good and evil. What we can do is try to understand what God actually did. As far as the universe goes, we know what He did for several reasons, which we will study when we get to the 20th century and the discovery of the Big Bang. But I'll give you a very quick run-through, just so you know scientists aren't making it up out of thin air. And no, they didn't conjure it up to get rid of God. The founder of the Big Bang Theory was a Catholic priest named George Lemaitre, as I mentioned at the beginning. So first, we know the universe is billions of years old because we can measure the light coming from distant galaxies that are billions of light years away. For these photons to have arrived on Earth, they must have begun their journey as many billions of years ago as their source is distant from us. This also means we can see into the past with telescopes. How far into the past? About 13 billion years ago, which, coincidentally, is also close to the age we have calculated for the oldest stars based on their metal content and other factors. Second, we have measured the movement of millions of galaxies throughout the universe. Except for some of the ones closest to Earth, all the galaxies are moving away from us, no matter which direction you look. And the farther out you look, the faster they're moving away. This means the universe is expanding. Now, if all the galaxies are flying away from each other, it's reasonable to run the clock backward. And when you do this, it becomes clear that all the galaxies must have been closer together. Keep running it back, and the whole universe must have started from a small point, in which case it would be denser and hotter the farther back we go, until we reach infinite density and heat in a sizeless singularity. Third, humans can use particle colliders to recreate conditions that would have prevailed in a small, dense universe, going back to the first trillionth of a second. And these conditions match information we gather from looking all the way to the back wall of the universe. This back wall of space and time is called the cosmic microwave background, which now glows amber all around us, and which you saw begin to retreat from us once it was cool enough for the atomic nuclei to capture electrons. Fourth, when we examine the kinds of nuclear reactions that must have happened in such an early universe, we find that it should have created about 75% hydrogen and 25% helium by mass, as we saw recently. When we train our telescopes on distant regions of intergalactic space and examine the gases there, we find this exact ratio, and we find it everywhere we look. There's no reason why there should be this ratio of hydrogen to helium throughout the universe, or why there should be any hydrogen, let alone helium, in outer space at all. Our knowledge of nucleosynthesis tells us that not only should we expect helium in the early universe, but this exact ratio is also precisely the ratio we should expect to see in deep space today. Fifth, the Big Bang Theory predicts the cosmic microwave background. This background radiation left over from the Big Bang was discovered in 1965, and it has all the properties the theory predicted. There are other lines of evidence. For example, the farther we look back into the universe with our telescopes, the smaller and more primitive and blob-like the galaxies are, showing that they're only just beginning to form, and that stars are only just beginning to emerge in these very early galaxies. There are other lines of evidence, but that should suffice for now. As far as why God would do this, when it comes to matter, God likes to start grand projects from small things. The biggest trees grow from the smallest seeds. You yourself started from a single cell. This is the way of all material creation. You will come to appreciate this approach more as you grow in wisdom and experience. But for that to happen, you have to move along. Thanks, Sophia. I think I'm ready to finish the journey. At the western edge of Bhutan, I was officially in the Himalayas, or at least this 10-meter wide slice of the Himalayas. Now I was trudging through thick mountain snow. I had several rocky hills to climb as I rose from 15,000 to 18,000 feet. I reached 20,000 feet for the first time at the northern spur of Longpo Peak. After a short dip, there was one more summit before Everest, a section near the summit of Jongsong Peak, just a short distance from the triple border of China, India, and Nepal. This was the last stop before the mighty Kangshung face, the sheer eastern face of Everest. I paused again at the top of Jongsong. I was at an elevation of 23,900 feet, according to PM2. About 10 golden steps ahead of me was the golden thread leading up the white knife in the sky. The rest of the climb would be all rope up Kangshung face. 5,131 feet of sheer ascent, almost exactly 1 mile. Thankfully, my magical story body felt like it was still only about 40 pounds, so it was like climbing on the moon. Still, this was the most insane thing I've ever done. After putting on some cleated boots the arrow provided, I walked up to the rope and grabbed it tight. "Remember," Sophia said. I replied, "Be where I am." I let out one last sigh and then hoisted myself up, climbing one firm grip after another, not looking up or down. I knew I would certainly fall if I did, just keeping my eyes on the snowy wall right in front of my face. The climb seemed to take an eternity. But when the golden rope started hugging the slope tighter, I knew I was near the top. Soon the rope ended, being tied in a knot to a golden ladder rung, with a few more ladder rungs above it. I grabbed each one as hard as I could and hoisted myself up. The ladder rungs then became 6 steps, which I slowly crawled up, shaking with fear and joy as I did so. In front of the very last step was a 10-meter square area of summit, the top of the slice, large enough for me to jump up and down and shout with victory. I was so elated I even felt okay examining the 4 corners of the summit and looking back over the progress I had made. For the first time I hugged Sophia. Her face was radiant. I was no longer afraid of heights, at least for the moment. "You made it," she said. Sophia let me have a good long rest. I sat and laid my head on the exact summit, which was only a small pillow-shaped bump rising through the middle of the platform, and I just absorbed the feeling of being on top of the world. Directly above me was an odd sight. Flurries of snow swirling under a vast ceiling of scorching hydrogen and helium. How on earth will I be able to explain this to anyone, I thought. "How am I going to write this down, Sophia? I'm supposed to be writing a book for Chava, right?" "Yes, that is an essential part of your NT training now, and since you are about to have your first NT lessons, now is the perfect time for you to write everything you have seen up to this point. But first, are you ready for the next stage of your journey?" "Only you know the answer to that question, Sophia." "Then let's go."